First off, thank you so much everyone for coming. We're really, really appreciative to see so many faces in the room and so many new faces as well, and especially those that have travelled so far to come here tonight. That really means a lot to have support for the student movement, so thank you so much. We'd also like to thank the really large variety of student organisations that have actually endorsed tonight's dialogue. What's been incredible, it hasn't been the usual crowd of environmental groups. Tonight we've got religious groups endorsing the event, we've got student leadership programs, and we've got Greek houses. It really means a lot to us to have such cross-campus support. So, what do we want tonight to look like? First off, we'd like to say that tonight is about dialogue, and we're going to try and create an open space for everyone's opinion to be heard on these very important issues. Hopefully we can have a discussion that will ultimately shape and better this movement here at Dartmouth. So our dialogue is going to be about the successes and challenges of the national movement, but even more so about its applicability to Dartmouth. We hope that by reflecting on what's happened so far, learning more about the issues at hand, and what's been happening around the country, and by answering all of your most pressing questions, we can help shape the strongest possible movement here at Dartmouth. Let's put all ideas on the table about how to create a better future for our students, for our college, and for all of the communities that we're a part of around the world. This is a pertinent time to be discussing these things here at Dartmouth. In the past few weeks, we've seen an upswing in extremely valuable open dialogue, in a commitment to every level to tackling injustice head on. We as students have been given voice to criticize the status quo, and we need to keep the momentum going. We'd like to follow the lead of Swarthmore College, where their recent appeal to the Board of Trustees was for no more business as usual. They weren't just referring to fossil fuel investments, but sexual assault, classism, and racism as well. So, I've said it a few times already, and you might actually still be wondering, what is divestment? Put simply, to divest is to uninvest, to reallocate monetary resources away from a particular industry. This is normally on ethical or moral grounds. Dartmouth actually has a really strong history of divestment. In the 1980s, we were the first Ivy to divest from South Africa under apartheid, which was a move that Nelson Mandela credited with breaking the back of apartheid. In 1993, we divested from a controversial hydro project in Quebec. In 2005, we divested from arms and oil companies in Sudan. And just last year, we finally divested from tobacco. This movement is different. Never before has a move to divest been made from an industry that makes up such a large proportion of our endowment. And never before has a move to divest been made from an issue that affects every single one of us in our society. Now, first, we're going to hear from a number of student speakers. Students that have a story to share on their role as activists today. Fossil fuel divestment is one of the biggest student movements we've seen in a long time, but it's just part of the larger climate, environmental, sustainability movement, however you want to call it. I'm lucky enough to be part of a wonderful community of students here at Dartmouth, and it's wonderful to see so many friendly faces. And we're all working hard every day to try and create a more livable future. So first, we're going to hear from Molly.
I've been thinking a lot lately about why I do the things I do, because here at Dartmouth we all face time and budget constraints. I found myself facing incredible time and budget constraints this year, and it just makes me want to think about why I care about the things I care about and what I do on a daily basis. And it reminds me of the importance of being mindful and purposeful in what I do. So in thinking about those time and budget constraints, I've been thinking, what are the things that I really have to do, that I feel like I can't take out of my schedule no matter how many things I have to do in my day. And I realize it's the things that I do because I love to do them and because I need to do them. And not just because there's something that everyone else is doing or that I'm told that I should do. So I'm the type of person that loves to do a lot of things. I love to be in the outdoors, I love music, I love art. But I realized that if I don't do this meaning climate activism and sustainability, then none of the other things that I do really matter. So that's what I've been thinking about lately, when thinking about why I do what I do. And thinking about divestment specifically, I've also had a lot of time thinking about that in the past few months. And there are definitely many people that are going to say that divestment is not the answer to climate change. And of course, it's not the only answer to climate change. I think all of us up here realize that. But what I've also realized is that we'll never find a perfect answer to any problem, and that maybe the best answer that we can find is many, many different answers. And so that's how you build a movement, is with the many, many different approaches and answers. And then I feel that divestment is what I can do right now as a student, is to be part of this movement. And that's my answer, and that's my part of the solution. That's what I can do. So that's where I'm coming from.
Hello, everyone. It's amazing to see how many people turned out to see and participate in the divestment dialogue. I'm just amazed. I've never seen anything like this before. So anyways, I'm Tim Serkes. I am a dual degree engineering student from Vassar College. This is my first year at Dartmouth, and in finding community, I sought out the sustainability communities here, and I found a really great home with wonderful people. And I guess why I'm here is I want to tell you about my story and my introduction to divestment and why I support it, not really what divestment is. So I was first introduced to divestment by my partner, Noah Bakanoff, who's sat right here. He's leading the divestment campaign at Vassar College. And back in September, I was talking to Noah over the phone, and he was telling me how a representative from Green Corps came to Vassar to ask him to initiate the movement at Vassar. And I was trying to get a handle on what this brand new concept of divestment was. And considering that I'm an engineering and physics student, not a tech student or a finance major or a sociology or a history major, I don't really consider myself having a solid background in historical social movements or divestment portfolios. Though these are things one could begin to conceptualize by reading a few articles on the internet. Once I thought I was more informed on the topic, I still didn't understand how a college, or a dozen, or 100 colleges for that matter, would make a notable financial dent in slowing and eventually stopping the extraction of fossil fuels. And this particularly discouraged me from thinking that divestment was a necessary action. And I don't think I was alone in this sentiment. Though something ended up happening, and I can't really pinpoint exactly what it was. Maybe it was a combination of the dozen or so conversations I had with activist-minded students at Dartmouth. But I came to realize how activism played out in my own life choices. And I think there's a term for that called lifestyle activism. I began to see how the conscious choices I made, choices pertaining to my diet, my well-being, my social interactions, my recreational activities, my academic and career goals, and my non-academic and non-career goals, and how those choices affected people around me. And what I discovered was that imposing what I found valuable in my own life didn't necessarily lead to others making an informed decision, especially when their own value systems weren't considered or acknowledged, even if that value system is rooted in something that's nonsensical. With regards to my diet, I saw my parents, who are avid meat eaters, mind you, try a vegan diet for a few weeks. And this is after me being vegan for about a year, partly for environmental reasons. And I saw friends of mine here at Dartmouth begin adopting vegetarian or vegan diets, and I think it was partly because of me. And my response to the questions of my friends and family asking why would you want to decrease your consumption of animal products? Don't you miss cheese? And I think my answer to these questions was sort of what instigated change in their own lives. I didn't respond to these questions defensively, and I didn't respond to these questions with an imposition of my own lifestyle. I approached these conversations in a way so that I could provide the opportunity for a learning experience for my friends, family, and for myself. This mindset spilled into other aspects of my life. My family saw me attend the Forward on Climate rally in DC back in February, and passing up a family get-together to attend that. In addition, my friends and family saw me dedicate hours upon hours to environmental groups, such as the Big Green Bus here at Dartmouth. And I think it was my behavior that sparked the curiosity and desire to understand. And by providing the opportunity to learn by example, one can set the stage for change. And in my experience, it takes some time for the planted seed of knowledge to germinate. People come around to doing good, or to doing what people like us, or I'm speaking for myself, think is the right thing to do. I certainly recognize the immediacy in the issues of climate change and how fossil fuel divestment ties into such environmental issues that really don't have time to wait for an overhaul of a person's perception. I'm also not saying that the divestment campaign should have a protracted timeline of efficacy. I'm just observing something that I think is notable, which is how, why, and when people make change in their own lives when the immediacy isn't apparent. I've made the awe-inspiring conclusion that people like to do things that make them feel good. And I think our generation is at a critical point in which the physical and social climate of our world isn't making us feel good. When people don't feel good, they want to change. And when people change, they want to feel good about the change that they make in their lives. And for many, I think this could mean being involved in the environmental movement. Now, considering fossil fuel divestment, I feel empowered to be a supporter of fossil fuel divestment. I'm emboldened by the changes I've seen in my own life and in those around me. And I see the immense potential that fossil fuel divestment has in creating a more striking awareness of the issues around us. This movement, as we all know, is more than just divesting from fossil fuels. It's a social movement that affects all of us. And I think that our generation is coming around to seeing the interconnectedness of the most seemingly disparate issues in our world, as evidenced by the inspiring turnout of an event like this and the co-sponsorship by so many different student organizations on campus that aren't environmental groups. And in light of recent events at Dartmouth, I think that the Dartmouth community is looking for something to unify and propel us forward to change. And I think that the divestment movement could be part of that. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Saylor. I'm a current 16th student here. And a lot of times when I want to talk about these things, I think it's really important that I come from a place of the heart, and so you guys understand sort of who I am and where I'm coming from with a lot of this. And I guess I should start by getting you the context of why climate change and all these things really matter to me. And a lot of that comes from sort of the experiences I had living in Mexico for the past 2 years. And so I grew up in many different places, but I never really had the opportunity to engage with an area where the environment and people were so closely linked. And a lot of that came from just having the opportunity to live in New Mexico. And sort of my transition at that time was coming from Vermont. And from Vermont to New Mexico, the number one thing was the differences in water that's there. And that, as it turns out, the community I moved into, Las Vegas, is one of the places in New Mexico that's currently facing some of the most significant droughts in the country. And that's something that really impacts the community there very much. The first time that really became relevant to me was when I was having dinner with one of my teachers in the first 2 weeks of being in school. And I was very used to at home, sort of after a family meal, getting ending up with my elbows in a tub full of soap and scrubbing up dishes. But there you use half a cup of water, and that's what you have to use. And sort of, I guess in telling that story, what I want to share is just that the environment and we as people are intrinsically linked. And it's very hard to sort of separate us from our environment, but it's very easy for us to abstract sort of the impact that we have on the environment. And in that sense, I think that's something that we need to sort of bridge and ameliorate as we go forward in the future. There's no way that we can continue to do the things that we do without recognizing that we are tied. Because, one of the things that I realized while I was in New Mexico was actually that things in Vermont are also very linked to the environment as well. While I was there, Hurricane Irene came through most of the southern part of the state. Fortunately, I lived just far enough north that where I was living wasn't terribly impacted. But a lot of the places that I knew had been, and I didn't know this for a couple months turned out when I talked to my family on the phone, one of the things I said was, yeah, there's a lot of rain, and it was pretty bad and it was pretty windy, but you know, we're okay, and I thought nothing more of it. But a month and a half later, I Google searched Irene because I had heard sort of other stories, and what I saw was pretty different. A lot of the places that I had seen sort of growing up in Vermont had been dramatically changed from flooding damage, from high waters, and from other factors involved with that. The infrastructure was all destroyed, the bridges were taken out. And that was something that became very real to me. And sort of coupling those two issues was then compounded once again when Sandy came through and my grandparents were displaced, living on the Jersey Shore. And so all of these factors, you know, while disparate events, while tenuously linked to climate change, as some might say, they are all happening now, and they're all happening for very different reasons, but they're all linked to the fact that we are modifying the way that we interact with our world and the way that we're choosing to do so. And so when I think about these things like divestment and these other issues, you know, it comes from a place of the heart. What is it that we're here for that we want to change? What is it that we are doing that we're having an impact on this? And if we can make a difference, how do we do that? And then I kind of think about my role as a student, and it was actually sort of surprising to me when I was asked to speak here that I was being called an activist, because I've never once really thought of myself as an activist. I've never used that label before, or that term. But I guess maybe it applies, but what's more important than that is just the fact that we have the opportunity to create change, and we have the opportunity to make a difference if we want to. And so that's something that I've tried to take to heart in the things that I do, and I think it's something that we can all do as students here at Dartmouth. And how does that correlate to divestment, you might ask? And I guess when I think about it, divestment for us as students is sort of a political statement. It's what we have to say yes or no. This is something we support. This is something that we don't. And you know, there's a lot of arguments that go either way to say, is it, you know, we may be divesting. What is that effect? Are we actively making change? Is the sum of money that we're withdrawing from this industry going to make a difference? And the question is, you know, for me personally, I don't know very much about finance. It's not sort of my area of expertise. I don't know. But what I do know is that that's my way of having a voice, and that's my way of sharing that sentiment. One thing I'm not okay with, though, is simply divesting. It's not okay for us just to stand up and say, we don't want to do this. This isn't part of me. This isn't something that I want to own anymore. If we are actively participating in that through our infrastructure or the ways we're involved here on campus. So I guess my perspective in all of this is that I would like to come from a place where, yes, we divest, but we also divest in our actions as well, and do everything that we can to sort of mitigate the hypocrisy that comes with, you know, being part of the fossil fuel economy and also wanting to divest. So I hope that sort of gives you some opportunity to sort of reflect on how these things impact your own lives. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been affected by these things. In fact, I believe all of you have in one way or another. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's major, and the real difference there is simply in how you choose to perceive it. But the reality is, you know, this is the planet that we have, and this is the opportunity that we have to make differences that we want to see in it and on it for the rest of our lives here, and for everyone else as well. So, thanks.
It's incredible to see so many people here. Thank you all so much for coming, and everyone who's worked on this. So my name is Leehi. I'm a freshman here, and just so you know a little bit about me, I didn't grow up camping or hiking or spending any time with nature. I didn't consider myself an environmentalist. My parents still think what I do is a hobby and not so much what is my life's passion. So please know that. I will just share one short experience I've had with you. So I'm here because I took an environmental biology course because nothing else was available, and I learned about climate change, and it seemed to me that something that was so big and it was just smacking us in the face, and I didn't understand why action wasn't, at least to me, significant action wasn't being taken about it, and that's what motivated me to change. So I'm not going to talk about what I've done, but I just want to share some of the experiences I've had and the people I've met with you. I was at the Rio +20 United Nations conference this past June, and when I was there, I attended a youth side event, and I struggled as I listened to a young woman about our age, well, university student age, talk about tears streaming down her face, talk about how she lives in a Native American community in North Dakota, and how people who are close to her are dying of cancer at extremely high rates. And as you may know, there's a lot of oil and gas development in North Dakota. And I fought tears as I heard her talk, because feeling her pain, knowing that there's something that isn't right here, was not something I could easily accept. I met fellow human beings from the tar sands region in Alberta, I'm Canadian, the First Nations communities who cannot walk outside without getting a nosebleed or an asthma attack because they are so polluted. I went to another conference in Doha, Qatar, the International Climate Negotiations, where I listened to the lead negotiator for the Philippines, the most respected member of his country who was present at the United Nations, deliver his country's speech to the UN and cry because he, at the same time of delivering the speech, had to hear news from back home that the Philippines was ravaged by Typhoon Bofa, and hearing of his country counting its dead, and hearing about the chaos and destruction there. I hear these first-hand accounts, and I cannot accept the fate that scientists predict for us. I refuse to accept it. I am told that what I do isn't worth my energy, and that climate change is going to happen anyway, and that maybe I can't influence the powers that be. But the reality of it is that as a young person, I don't have another choice. I've had these connections with other global citizens who compel me to act. And I wholeheartedly acknowledge that I use electricity, that to these conferences I did fly, and that I am a part of this system that is dependent on fossil fuels. And that is contrary to discouraging me. That is what empowers me to act, because we do need change, and we need it urgently. This is everything to me. And I know I can't possibly convey how passionate I am about this to you, but Real Plus 20 was also where I briefly met Phil, right before a bunch of organizations decided to walk out of the conference. And upon enrolling at Dartmouth and coming to the United States, I contacted him and we spoke a bit about organizing, and this divestment movement started. So just a little bit of an update on what Divest Dartmouth has done so far. We launched in December 2012, so yes, over winter break we were organizing. We have since had speakers come from 250.org. We have brought dialogue to campus to the point where an introductory environmental studies course is choosing the question of whether or not to divest in their core curriculum. We launched a petition in April that has over 300 signatures to date. We have been contacted by alumni, by community groups who all want to be a part of this. And this event is sponsored by more than 20 very, very diverse groups. And so among other things, this is where we are now. We're here to begin working with administration to talk about how we can make this community a better place and how we can all collectively work to make our global community